The 49ers just wrapped up another day at training camp. We got our man live, Rohan Chakravarthi, who was there to give us the latest, including a brand new wide receiver signed by the 49ers. Stay tuned. We're going through it all. What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk TV. We have a very, very special show. We got our guy, Rohan Chakravarthi. I know you might be thinking it's Wednesday, but it's actually not. It's Friday. He just got back from practice in the middle of actually writing his reports for WebZone. So we do appreciate you, Rohan, for taking the time. How are you, man?
You know I always got time for you, and you know this is going to be a great show. All of y'all that aren't, this is my second stream of the day. Got my own personal stream, so if you guys missed the breakdown, don't worry, because we're breaking it all down here. But how are you today, Sunil? How is you doing on this Friday? And what?
Two things, man.
Yeah.
The work ethic from you to not even leave the locker room yet is amazing, because you're still there. You're like, I'm just going to bring my computer to the locker room and start writing up for WebZone, but
I'm dark as Denard. Like, you heard that story last year where Denard spent the day and a half in the locker room just learning the playbook. That's who I am. I'm just staying in the locker room. It's my new home. You know how it be.
I love it. And then second, you were on Grant Cohn's show, which obviously is a great platform to build your brand and whatnot. And I do want to say, I've already told you off camera, but I wanted to say, man, you did an amazing job. So many comments. I read through them even this morning. Everybody loved you on that show, Rohan. So it's really great to see you shine, and that, you get a bigger platform to people to realize all the hard work you do and, how well you cover the team, man. So I wanted to say kudos to you, my man.
Thank you, man. And shout out to QC, quality control over there. He obviously extended his platform to me. Been wanting to collaborate with him for a while. So definitely a guy who I respect a lot with his work ethic as well. And it was a fun time, and glad that you and hopefully glad that others liked it as well. Haven't been able to read the comments yet, but that's a good thing to hear.
They're all positive, man. They're all positive. But enough about that. This is why we brought you in. You were obviously at practice day 8, right? This is day 8 of practice. So give us your, overall impressions. What did you see? What stood out? Tell us what your thoughts were.
I thought today was a better day offensively and just overall, right? The vibe. Because the defense is still going to win every single day, in my opinion, of training camp, just because they're the better side of football, right? When you talk about this defense, you've got 3 levels of work. But today was the first day where we really saw the offensive line in action. Monday, the first day of pads, is where we saw the first day of offensive line altogether. But today was the day I cared about the most, because Tuesday was offensive line's strongest day, and Mike McGlinchey wasn't there. So how would the offensive line work when McGlinchey was there? Would it be even better? And the offensive line was great today. The starting offensive line didn't allow a single sack. I think there was only 1 or 2 sacks overall in the day. Now, let's be clear. There is a reason for it. Nick Bosa did not play in team drills, or he played like 1 series, and that was it. Javon Kinlaw did not suit up, and he's been a menace in the backfield every single day, right? He's just been there. And then the other guy was Ark Armstead, who's obviously injured, right? So 3 of the starting 4 defensive linemen on the best defensive line, at least in the division, and maybe even in football, were not on the field. So there is a reason for it, but overall, nonetheless, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to see a strong day, cohesion between the guards and the tackles, between the guards and the centers, and just a strong day from the starting five. And that was the biggest storyline, in my opinion, of the day. It didn't even matter how much Trey Lance performed or how much Sedfeld performed or anything like that. The offensive line working well. And I had told you when we talked on Wednesday that I personally was not even worried. I didn't even have them as my as the group I was worried the most about. I was not worried really much, and the offensive line, it definitely showed how it was working well with all five out there.
Now, obviously, when starters aren't there to play, it gives a great opportunity for some of the depth or some of the backups to really shine. So, with 3 out of the 4 starting offensive linemen there are out, who stepped up? Who were some guys that looked good? Any new faces, or is it still more of the same of the guys that are staying, I guess, relevant and consistent when they get the opportunity?
Yeah, so when you talk about the defensive line, there is one consistent face that has stood out, right? And with those 3 guys, this guy got some time to shine. Kevin Givens. Kevin Givens has been a consistent contributor on the defensive line. He's started a majority of practices, right? Because Armstead was out after day 1. He got injured with that sprained MCL on day 1. So Givens has gotten all the starting reps since then. And he's been a constant contributor, be it in getting sacks or even being getting in the backfield on rushes. Today, his main play was a TFL. He had bridged the gap. Spencer Burford and Mike McGlinchey were the guys, and they didn't have a bad rep. Burford's job was to go to the second level, chip, and go to the second level. Givens was able to bridge through, get through in between the gap between the guard and the center, and was just able to get there real quick for a 2-yard loss because he's just that athlete. Great play by Kevin Givens overall.
Great. And I hate to ask this because his name hasn't come up by anybody, but there's one guy on the defensive line that I love, and his name is Jordan Willis, and nobody's ever talking about Jordan Willis. So, Rohan, can you give me, is my guy doing anything out there? Is he even on the field?
Oh, he is on the field. I'll tell you that. He is on the field. Jordan Willis got some Jordan Willis and O'Menahue were the 2 edge rushers that were – so – in walkthroughs, right? Bosa was there in walkthroughs. He just didn't participate in scrimmage in 11-on-11s. In the initial part, right, when they're running through the install, O'Menahue and Willis were the backup edges to Ebukam and Bosa. So they do play, and Willis did get some first-team reps as well today. But overall, Willis's name really hasn't been mentioned too much. I know there have been some sort of like hustle plays, right? Where I've seen Willis get a pressure because he ran after the quarterback on a bootleg and things like that. But that was against Brock Purdy. His name hasn't been mentioned too much. He hasn't consistently really won. I can go back and see. I'll check out actually real quick the one-on-ones because that will tell me a little more. The one-on-ones did not happen on Wednesday, day 7, but they did happen on Tuesday. And if I look at number 75, he beat Sam Schluter in a one-on-one, so that was pretty cool. But he lost to Donovan West in a one-on-one. And then another one, he once again lost to, he lost to Sam Schluter in a one-on-one. And then he lost to Jalen Moore in a one-on-one. So he wasn't really that consistent in one-on-ones.
Well, he was consistent, just consistently losing. But that's okay. Look, my guy Jordan Willis is more of an in-game player than a practice player. That's all I'm gonna chalk it up to, right? He's still gonna be a constant contributor.
I still think he's on the bubble. Like I don't think the jury definitely isn't out, right? Because you said it. He had 3 sacks last year. Still think he's on the bubble to make the roster. He in my opinion is like right now near that 10th and 11th guy. And just based on the rotations, right? Like I said, he's the backup edge. So I still think he honestly will make the roster, but it will be interesting to see who shines out over the last couple of days because there have been a couple of guys like him as one of them who've gotten playing time. It's just not necessarily made the most of it. He's one. Kerry Hyder, in my opinion, has been another. Those 2 guys have gotten time with the 1s and the 2s, just haven't necessarily shown up a lot in terms of in pass rushing, pretty much.
Another name, you just mentioned it, but we haven't heard too much about him though, and that's Samson Ebukam. So I know he's slotted in as the starter on the other edge opposite Bosa, but I've been hearing more about the guys that you were talking about, Omenahu and I forgot who you just saying, Givens. Those two have been getting at least being talked about more than Ebicom is, and also Drake, right? Drake has been getting his name out there. Are they just not giving? Are they like, because they know what Ebicom is capable of, they're kind of ramping his play down, or is he just not performing at a high level either?
To me, Ebukam, it's not that he hasn't been performing in a high level. It's just his name doesn't mention it. He gets mentioned as much because of his role. Ebukam is one of the better run defenders on the team. I don't think that that's disputed. So that's why he starts, right? Because he's a run defending first, pass rushing second, defensive end. And he's been solid in run defense. You've seen him pop up a couple of times in run defense. But the 49ers also debut a lot of pass coverage, pass coverage sets. So Ebukam's name doesn't pop up a lot. I know he had one pressure on Trent Williams. I forget what day it was, but his name hasn't popped up too much in pass rushing. I don't attribute it too much to a lack of Ebukam's poor play. I more so attribute it to the 49ers understand what they have in Ebukam, especially in the run defending game, and they want to see other names out there in the pass rushing section to see how they play, like the names we just mentioned in Omenahu, Jordan Willis, and maybe even on the they slide guys right sometimes on the interior, on the outside, and even Drake Jackson at times has gotten reps with the ones.
Yeah, I need you to start saying Jordan Willis's name more and more, just so that we could work that into existence, because I love that guy and I want him to do really, really well. But there was some other news that came out of 49ers. 49ers have been working out some players. They actually cut a wide receiver today to sign Willie Snead. And that's actually pretty interesting, Rohan. And the reason why it's interesting to me is we have been saying that this is one of the best wide receiver rooms that the 49ers have had under Kyle Shanahan. And to see that the player that they brought in was another wide receiver, is this just about the talent of Willie Snead, or are there some question marks in the wide receiver room as to whether or not there's enough there to move into the regular season?
Well, I can talk real quick about the cut, right? Taysir Mack was cut. He is the undrafted rookie out of Pittsburgh. He had a poor showing on Wednesday. He essentially dropped a pass that just went right through his hands, got batted up, and Diamondre Lenore caught it and went the other way for a pick six. The 49ers have had some drop issues, some pretty big drop issues to start camp from several receivers. I know I've mentioned Juwan Jennings' drop issues. Today there was a drop by Malik Turner, which is unfortunate because he's one of the more surefire hands, has had some of the more surefire hands so far. Deebo Samuel had a drop on Wednesday. Like, there have been a couple of drops, and I think the 49ers just made this move to eliminate that and try and get some new hands in the position. Overall, though, I think this Willie Snead signing isn't more of a we want to try and get you on the roster, but rather we need an extra body, because the other news that came receiver-wise was Marcus Johnson. So let's just go back real quick to Tuesday.
Okay.
The fights. The first fight, right, we talked about, but the second fight between Brandon Ayuk and Fred Warner. The big one. Why did it happen? It's because after the play, Warner threw a cheap shot at receiver Marcus Johnson, laid him out, who was shaken up after the play, and then Brandon Ayuk squared up. Well, that cheap shot actually landed Marcus Johnson in the concussion protocol, and he was seen wearing a blue jersey today. And so the 49ers need some more wide receiver depth, at least in their eyes, it seems. Hence why they worked out Willie Snead and Dede Westbrook. I saw the workout after practice. Both actually looked pretty solid. And so to me, I'm actually thinking this is more about depth. I think the 49ers already have quality depth at the receiver position so far. Like, they have 5 locks, right, on the receiver position. And as for that 6th guy, I think there are 2 names right now that are still popping out in Malik Turner and Tay Martin. I still think that there are better options than Snead for the 53-man roster. And we don't even know if the 49ers will carry 6 receivers at this point as well. So I think this is more so for depth, and because this organization kind of plays it more conservative with every player just for health reasons at this point in the offseason. So it, in my opinion, is a little more for depth.
Do any of these issues with the wide receivers, Rohan, are any of them critical to the point where there might be some guys that we thought were locks not make the roster.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. When we
Okay.
talk about the 5 locks, right? Like, I don't think nobody thinks that Malik Turner or Tay Martin was a lock getting into camp.
Right.
They could be seen as favorites. Well, when we talk about the 5 locks, in Debo, obviously,
Hmm.
Brandon Ayuk, obviously, Jawan Jennings after the last year, and after like today, he had a good day. He had 2 really nice catches, a 25-yard catch, and then a 30-yard one in traffic where he got laid out and still made the catch. So he had a nice day. He's a lock. McLeod definitely is a lock after what we've seen in a way in minicamp and in training camp. And then Danny Gray, you spent a 3rd-round pick on this year. He's not going anywhere, regardless of how inconsistent he's been during training camp. So that's 5 receivers. And regardless of whatever issues that they end up having over the next 4 days, I think they're still all locks to make the roster. I'd be surprised if any of them were cut due to contractual situations. Well, first of all, primarily contractual situations, but also their level of play compared to the rest of the playing field.
Okay. Great to hear. Now, most of our talk over the last few days when it comes to training camp has been the defense because they've just been stalwarts, been very, very impressive at all different levels, right? Whether it be the corners, the safeties, the D line, the linebackers. But the overall sense of today was the offense did have a much better day. You mentioned it in the beginning of the show. Fernando was just talking about Trey Lance. Did an interview today where he's talked about the like kind of like the Matrix, where everything's starting to slow down for him, and the game's becoming a little bit easier. It seems like the offense did have a better day. You talked about Jennings having a better day, and the offensive line doing better as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go a little bit more in depth about what today made the offense look so good. Can you talk a little bit about how the running game looked, specifics about what the offensive line did well, and then just Trey Lance and the passing game, what improvements you saw there as well?
Yeah, so I mean, if we talk about I talked about the offensive line, right, and how they were stout, and obviously it led Lance to be more poised in the pocket rather than having to move around a lot, and he was able to deliver a lot of throws. Now, today was the biggest thing with the offense, apart from the defensive players not playing. Oh, the not install, but the pass selection from Trey Lance was much different than we've seen. I talked about how he's more comfortable throwing the ball down the field. Well, he's over the last 2 days, he hasn't really been that accurate down the field. Today, he overthrew Deebo Samuel, who was very tightly covered by Emmanuel Mosley by about 10 yards. And then on another very tightly covered throw to Jermichael Hasty by Azeez Al-Shire, missed him as well. So maybe it's purposefully, but overall, if it is purposeful for you to be missing those throws and overthrowing, you shouldn't be throwing them at all in that
Mm-hmm.
direction. And so to me, Lance, 13 passes today, 9 completions, 1 drop, but 5 of his 13 throws only were over 10 yards. All the 8 other throws were below 10 yards. Hence, like when you throw shorter distances, you're bound to have higher completion percentage. That's just regular football. That's why you've seen some of Nate Sudfeld's completion percentages just go through the roof. Sudfeld overall had a great day today. I think like you saw the first and second team offense move because Sudfeld himself had his best day of camp today, 14 to 16, and he was able to complete passes down the field for the first time all camp. He hadn't really been successful or consistent over a regular day basis to complete passes like that. But let's stick with Lance because I don't care about Sudfeld too much.
Yeah. Before you go on, because you mentioned
Yeah.
that there were more shorter passes. Now, one thing that you do a really great job of, Rohan, is talk about context. Now, were these shorter passes checkdowns, or were these shorter passes actually in the scheme of the game that they were the right place to put the ball based off of what the defense was giving them?
I'd say both. I'd say some of these shorter passes, they were the correct read to make. And by that, I don't mean it was the last read. Lance is on his last resort and then just throwing the check down because nobody's open. There were times where people weren't open, specifically downfield. But overall, I think it was just in the flow of the game. A lot of these throws were quick throws, right? So Lance snap literally a second after he's getting it out of his hands, hitting a receiver, be it like near the flat, area and then they go off or whatever it may be. There were a couple of throws like that, but there was the move the ball period today where it's first, second, third, fourth down. On these third down throws, they're not looking to go 40 yards. They're looking to just move the chains and keep it going. So you saw a lot of throws which might have been like earlier you might have been like, oh, you're just going to settle for that. You're like, there's a reason that they're settling for shorter throws. It's because you're trying to get 10 yards overall on a 4-down period or on a 3-down basis and move forward, right? That's the main reason I think for this.
So more like the game of play, basically.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's more like the game of play. Like there were several third down throws where it's just like right next to the chains where they barely get through the chains, but like it's the correct read to make because you don't need to get 5 yards ahead of the chains for a first down. You need to just get there. And so I think it's like remember in football, where like beforehand, you don't necessarily worry too much about where the ball is going, but overall, what you're looking to do is just move the ball to get a first down, right? And so it might not be like the sexiest read or something like that, but when you see that receiver that is open for a first down and you need a first down, you're not going to go to your next progression. You're going to throw that ball regardless if it's 4, 5, 6 yards, or like I said, 40 yards. Like that's just the case in football. And so that's why I think a little bit more was like this. And we haven't necessarily really seen move the ball periods either. Today wasn't that extended of a move the ball period, but we haven't necessarily seen move the ball periods yet for the 49ers. Maybe that's why we have seen a little more offensive struggle. It just seemed like a little more in rhythm today.
So Rohan, when we're saying that, because once again, we're trying to put things in context. Obviously, the news about Trey Lance has been very up and down, but it's because it's practice, right? They're working on specific things, not necessarily what would be like game time performance, right? But in these move the ball sessions, this is going to be more similar to game time because it's not like scripted plays as far as like a specific install. Like they're getting the play in. They don't know what the next play is going to be based off of the play because Kyle Shanahan's calling the next play based off of what they did the play before, much like it would be in a regular game. So when we're seeing Trey Lance in this setting, you said he went, 9 for 14?
9 for 13 and 1 drop, yeah.
9 for 13. So when you're looking at it this way, did he show like he has more of a command for the position? Did this show you more of what you needed to see as far as confidence level for Trey Lance being the starter? Or was it just kind of like not where we shouldn't read that much into it?
I at least confidence wise, I'd say yes. For the other part, I wouldn't necessarily say so. I still want to see this 49ers offense move a little smoother. It's still, like, in my opinion, at least, it could be completely different for others. And I'm not saying that the 49ers shouldn't settle for what they're doing now, because obviously, if the ball is moving, the ball is moving. But I'd like to see a little more of a variety of passes rather than just purely short passes, because we've seen time and time again that check down machines in the NFL don't necessarily attribute to a lot of points. If you're trying to score 27 points in a game to win that football game, you can't necessarily do it by having similar passes and trying to move the chains like this, because it's the defense is going to just remember the first team offense is on the field for 15 plays. In a regular game, the first team offense will be on the field for like 30, 40, maybe even 50, 60 plays, right? And so that's the difference, because I still think that there is a positive, obviously, to take away from it, because it was a great performance from Trey Lance. And overall, when you talk about it, like, not only was it a great performance from Trey Lance because you saw the other performances, but also because he did what he was supposed to do. I just think the landscape of football is going to change when it comes to real game action, because it's not rotating with the 1s, 2s, and 3s. It's now having to do that consistently with the defense consistently also adapting to what you're doing. So to me, I want to see a lot, like, just a little more spread out like we've seen on some other days. But then again, I think we will see it, which is why I'm not worried at all. But the confidence-wise, definitely Trey Lance looked very confident today, and it's in a way a correlation with the offensive line. When the offensive line looks confident themselves and has a good performance, Lance looks confident, not flustered, doesn't worry about throws. And like the one time where he was under pressure today was off of play action. Jimmy Ward was charging in as the safety coming in. It seemed like on a blitz. Lance identified him and then tried to quickly throw it to the flat. but sailed the throw about 5 yards, stepping to the opposite side to the right, sailed it to Jeff Wilson Jr. That was the one play, in my opinion, where Lance made a poor throw, and it was because he was somewhat under pressure, but Lance is also shown that he can do well under pressure. So it's just developing consistency, but you don't have to worry too much about that if your offensive line is blocking very well in a game.
What ended up being the makeup of the offensive line during this when Trey Lance was out there for this move the ball?
This is a great question, and I think it'll probably lead into something we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Jake Brendel got the start. Oh, sorry, no. Daniel Brunskill got the start. Right. Daniel Brunskill got the start at center today. So it's been musical chairs, right, the entire time. Who got the start on Wednesday? It was Brendel. It's interesting because Brunskill had a great performance on Tuesday after Brendel got the start on Monday. But then we saw Brendel go back to being the starter on Wednesday. And then today, it's Brunskill after coaching staff, specifically Chris Forster yesterday raved about Jake Brendel, and then Kyle Shanahan called Brendel the starter right now. And then you see Daniel Brunskill trot out with the ones and play like they had an even split. It was like 2 series, one for one guy, 2 series for the next guy. And Brunskill did have some snap issues early. That was one thing. He had a botched snap on the second play of scrimmage, continuing his snap issues from last week. Mm-hmm. But overall, it was Williams, Banks, Brunskill, Burford, and McGlinchey as the starting 5. And the centers both played their best that they've played all week, but also the guards. The guards played really well today. I thought the guards were the better part, obviously, of the interior. Those two played really well today on top of the tackles. So good overall performance, especially from the outside 4 guys.
We're definitely going to talk about Kyle Shanahan's statements in a little bit. But before we jump off of this topic, I do want to touch on, did we see anything out of the running backs, tight ends as well? Any updates on that, or did they really not get much run in today's practice?
Running backs got a lot of run today.
Okay.
Mitchell just looks like a clear-cut running back 1. He looked really good today. He essentially took one to the house from like the 20-yard line, from the opposite 20-yard line. He essentially took one to the house. I called it like a 30-yard play at the time because he kind of stopped at the 50-yard line rather than going all the way. But you can call it either way. Like Jimmy Ward might have caught up to him. He was the guy in behind him, but Mitchell is faster, and he had a step. He probably would have gone all the way. It was a great block. Williams and Banks, right? There was the bridge between them on an outside zone run to the left. Williams and Banks had the bridge, and so Mitchell just had a clear gap right in between them. And then George Kittle had the third and final block, allowing him to just essentially go one-on-one with Jimmy Ward, who had a bad angle on the play based on where he was positioned. So that was one of the best plays. Mitchell also had a nice 12-yard rush on an outside zone to the right side with good blocking from Burford and McGlinchey. So there were 2 nice outside zone plays. Inside, overall, for all running backs, it's still a little bit of a struggle. They're still trying to get into the vision. TDP had a good day today. TDP had a series of power rushes where it was nice, but also some nice cuts as well, resulting in 5 to 7 yard carries. But he's playing against the second and third team defense. Sermon, Wilson, and Elijah Mitchell pretty much split the first team carries, and TDP only got 1. But Mitchell clearly looks like the best running back on the roster. TDP had the second best day. Sermon had a bit of a quieter day after having a good early start to the week because his vision today just didn't look as consistent. That was one of the issues where in the inside zone game, he just needs to have a little bit of a clearer vision today, which he didn't necessarily exhibit.
With McGlinchey out there, Rohan, are you seeing the same type of success on the left side as we are on the right side now that McGlinchey's out there? Because it seemed like even last season and earlier in the practice when McGlinchey isn't there, it seems like most of the success is down the left side. But you mentioned that there was a good run on the right side. Are they evenly having success on both sides of the offensive line?
I would say in a way, yes, but it also is too early to tell. McGlinchey obviously is a good run blocker. He's also thinner, which helps him in the run blocking game. But I would say yes, but it's too early to tell. And also because it's so small of a sample size, since the 49ers are really trying to pound that inside zone, they're trying to figure it out and get their running backs the experience that they need so that they can really truly utilize that vision and their talents that they have, be it the power run, be it the cutting ability, be it the downfield running ability. And so you haven't seen too many rushes that take off to the outside.
Now, and this might be another answer where it's too early to tell, but obviously
Go
there's
for
a
it.
new running backs coach there with Anthony Lynn. Has he been able to put his kind of seasoning on this yet? Are you seeing any kind of like things that were different from last season that you can attribute to maybe Anthony Lynn being there?
Yeah, so I mean, I was in a training camp, so I can't really tell with full knowledge as to if this was true in training camp. But we didn't really see running backs get too much action right in the passing game. Like Elijah Mitchell, I believe, was the highest runner, or highest receiver out of the backfield, and he had only 19 catches for 137 yards over the amount of games that he played. But you see a lot of action towards running backs, at least in the receiving game, right? Like you'll see at least 4 to 5 targets overall per day to running backs out of the receiving game, out of a carries, or out of like 46, you'll see at least 5, and sometimes it's even more on the shorter passing days. It is like on days where it's a lot more shorter, you'll see more. And they've also tried to set up some running back screens. They haven't necessarily always worked. TDP had a good one the other day. Didn't The one today was incomplete. And then but the one other thing that you've seen, sometimes running backs go out wide. I've seen it a couple of times in this scheme where you go in empty sets and have a running back go out wide and run a route.
So like setting up like in the slot or as a
Setting up
wide receiver.
outside, just setting up outside as a receiver, yeah, and a
Okay.
linebacker, like they motion out. They don't necessarily always start out. They normally motion out.
Hmm.
Linebacker picks them up, and they go one on one against the linebacker on the outside.
Do you see that with specific running backs, or is everybody getting a chance to do that?
I've seen it with a couple. I've seen it. I know I've seen it once with Mitchell. I saw it with Mason today, and then
Uh-huh.
Hasty ran a not he Hasty ran a wheel route from the running back spot today, which was beautifully covered. Uh, like I've seen it here and there. I know I've seen even TDP sometimes, but normally TDP, if he gets a catch, it's out of the backfield, not out wide. You see
Mhm.
it sparingly. So again, it's one of the too early to tells for the outside catching, but maybe that's something the 49ers use a little more this year.
Well, it's great that the offense is showing out a little bit more. Now it seems like a little more practice, a little more repetition, and
Yeah.
obviously with the full offense. Well, I mean, I think McGlinchey and Trent Williams being there obviously helps out that offensive line quite a bit. Um,
Right.
just before we leave off this topic, any more have we seen any progress with the Trey Lance Debo connection, or is that still a work in progress?
It's still a work in progress. Today was not a great day for that connection. They tried to connect deep. Lance overthrew him for 10 yards. Debo Samuel was just tightly covered. The issue right now, Debo Samuel just hasn't been able to separate as well, really, as he has in the past. Maybe it's rust. Maybe it's he's still getting into football shape. Didn't separate well, really, that well today, be it in one on ones or be it in, what do you call it? Be it in 11 on 11s. I know Tariq Castro Fields beat him on a one on one rep today. Travarius Ward was step and step on an incompletion today in one on ones as well. Those were the two one on ones where he got beat. And then in 11 on 11s, he just couldn't really get open with Trey Lance as the quarterback. And they were seen working with their connection after practice. I think it'll just take a little bit. But at the moment, you haven't seen too much yet from the two.
Was there a star today on the offensive side?
I would say Elijah Mitchell. I would say Elijah
Nice.
Mitchell in the offensive line. It was more so the running game. Brandon Ayuk. This was the first day where Brandon Ayuk really didn't see much action in the receiving game from Trey Lance. At least he had 2 catches on the day. Both were from Nate Sudfeld. No targets at all from Trey Lance today. Because again, it was a shorter day, right? They didn't, in terms of the passing, they didn't really target downfield a lot, and so Lance was throwing a lot more to a different variety of receivers in a different number of areas, and also running backs and tight ends.
Perfect. Pete, So Willie Snead, number 3 wide receiver. We actually discussed this topic a little bit earlier in the show, Willie. Show Pete. So if you want to go back, but just to let you know, Rohan believes that Willie Snead probably won't even make the team. This is just more another body in there due to some injuries that have happened in the wide receiver room. So Kyle Shanahan actually spoke today after practice, and there's 2 real big takeaways I took from what he discussed. The first one was he did give some clues as to who the starter at center he envisions being, and you mentioned it earlier in the show. It's Jake Brendel, which is kind of interesting because we've been discussing day after day, and you've been writing about it, and we've talked, and you've pretty much mentioned that Brunskill has gotten just as many snaps, if not more snaps at center than Brendel has. Brunskill hasn't taken any snaps at any other position other than center. So what do you make of this as far as why they maybe want to go with Brendel over Brunskill? And if, usually when Shanahan speaks, it's the truth. So if we're penciling in Brendel as the center, what do you think happens with Brunskill?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about it, it's interesting because he said it before practice, and then right after that, we see that Daniel Brunskill is the one. And it's interesting because yesterday when you hear Chris Forster, the offensive line coach, talking about Jake Brendel, talked about him in such a positive manner, comparing him even to Creed Humphrey at times, the star center. Trust me, he ain't no Creed Humphrey right now. That's for sure. No, obviously no slight to Jake Brendel, but Creed Humphrey is different. But like you saw how ravingly Forster talked about him, and you might wonder something I was talking about a little off camera today. Is there in a way a controversy on the coaching staff as to who should start at center? Because if Forster really likes Brendel, remember Brendel's this guy. Forster and Brendel were together in Miami. Right. Brendel signed with the 49ers because of Forster, and then during the COVID year he opted out, and then he came back in 2021 because of Forster, and then he's been on the team as a 28 and 29-year-old backup center for the last year, and now year 2 with Chris Forster, because Chris Forster wants him here. You don't necessarily hang on to a backup center that is that old for that long. And so it seems like he specifically wants Brendel to win the job, but there might be a controversy given the amount of reps that they've split. Right now, the main difference between the two is Brunskill struggles to snap. He has struggled to snap on a couple of times. It happened earlier last week. He botched snaps, and then today he botched another snap. And
that's a big deal, right, Rohan?
It is a very big deal.
That's kind of like the first job of the center is you got to be able to snap the ball.
And it's totally understandable because Brunskill is not a center. He's been a guard or maybe even a swing tackle at times during his career. But over the last, probably 5-7 years of his career, he hasn't been a center. He only was a center in 2020. And even then, when he played, he also had some botch snap issues, which is why people weren't that high on him as a center back then. So I've been fine with Brunskill's play. The only thing is, can he snap the ball? Because right now it doesn't seem like that. Obviously, he can snap. It's just, can you do it consistently? And Brunskill hasn't necessarily shown that overall. He's had good days. He's had some bad days. Yeah. Go ahead.
Are these mistakes snapping the ball with Trey under center, or is it more like shotgun or pistol kind of reps?
It's been both. Today was under center. Trey was under center, and Trey was going back. And Brunskill, I think at first he just didn't snap it, and then he snapped it to the ground after that. So. Wow. It's been like an interesting thing. Both had good performances, and it was just very interesting because you obviously hear the praise for Brendel and the expectation that he's going to be the center, but then he didn't start today. I'd expect him to start tomorrow because tomorrow's going to be the bigger install day, and they've been doing 1-1-1-1. But you kind of want this musical chair game to be done sooner than later so the offensive line can understand the tendencies of the center, specifically the guards who are both first-year starters, and then the quarterback himself needs to understand the tendencies, right? It's tough when you're switching in and out, and while both played well today, it's still like you want to get used to whoever the guy really is going to be before the regular season starts. Maybe they attempted in preseason and figure it out, but do you want Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey playing meaningful snaps in a preseason game? I don't really think so, especially if McGlinchey is coming back off an injury. And so, to me, I thought that this training camp period would be the most important days for that, and yet they've continued to flop these musical chairs like at center. While it's a legit battle, I understand that. I still think that the most effective solution would be have one guy play center one day and have another guy play center on the other day with the first and second team.
So I have two questions. One, the first question is outside of the snapping the ball, what are the positives and pros and cons of both players? Because let's talk about what the center needs to do, right? So not only is it snapping the ball, but which player, is there one that's stronger at the run blocking than the other? Is there one that's stronger at pass blocking than the other? Or what I guess is the similarities behind the players or differences that they might be trying to decipher who might be the best overall? Oh, I think Rohan is having some technical. Oh, there we go.
Perfect. I got it all fixed. Real quick, just repeat the second part of your question.
So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what they're trying to decipher between right now. So is there? I know you talked about obviously Brendel has been more consistent with the snaps than Brunskill, but they're still obviously giving Brunskill some run, and it could just be that they want to develop a backup center in case one or the other goes down. So that's why they're doing this. But as far as the other aspects of game for the center, pass blocking, run blocking, who is doing better at those? Who do you believe gives the 49ers the best chance, just based off of seeing both of these guys play?
It's still kind of tough to tell. Me personally, here's what I said about the center position earlier today. I don't care who starts. The 49ers have proven time and time again that they can start below average players at a position and be fine with it. I can just name examples off the top of my head. Colton McKivitz started 2 games last year and looked fine, right, at left tackle. Jalen Moore started a game. He didn't look fine in the second game, but he looked fine in the first game. Tom Compton started for the majority of a year and looked fine. And then when you talk about center, Ben Garland started the year the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. He's done it above average center. So, like, to me, it's not like I really care about the position and who starts. Like, obviously, you want the better player to be there, but I also care about continuity. I honestly think it'll get fixed because I said both centers look good today with the rest of the offensive line during their respective reps. I think it'll get fixed more so and, like, sooner than later if you have one specific guy. As for your first point about why they're doing this, I think your reasoning is honestly fair in that they want to develop that backup center because last year they had Jake Brendel as the backup center on the roster. He got elevated every single game. He wasn't on the 53-man roster. He was on the practice squad, but he was an elevated player every single game because he was the backup center. Right now, we don't have a backup center apart from any of these two guys. Keaton Sutherland won't make the roster. He is the third-string center right now. He's played second-team guard and third-string center. Neither will Donovan West likely make the roster. Or, I mean, Poe could, but Poe does not play center. Poe has played guard the entirety of training camp, and it's not fair to just make a switch like that, just like that. So these are the two centers on the roster, and while the 49ers technically didn't carry 2 on the 53 last year, they had 2 for every single game. And so that's where Brunskill might come in. If he loses the job, or Brendel might come in if he loses the job. Plus, Brunskill is a utility guy. He can play all 3 positions on the offensive line.
And that's my second question. So, obviously, Burford has been the stalwart there at right guard. So, if Brendel ends up being the starter, does that mean Brunskill moves to the bench, or does he start as right guard and Burford moves to the bench? And obviously, we don't know. You can't say for certain, but what would be your guess as far as how you're seeing Burford play?
I think it's honestly Burford going to be the starter. I'd be surprised if Burford doesn't start at right guard at this point, even though he's gotten no competition and Brunskill was the guy last year. I think you can make an argument that Spencer Burford right now is better than Daniel Brunskill, at least for the 49ers. And given the consistency and that Brunskill hasn't played the position all year now in the offseason and Burford has, I think you can make that argument for sure. And I mean, Burford still has a long, in a way, still a good amount to go, right? To fully refine himself as a top guard in the NFL. I'm not saying that he's like an amazing player right now or anything, but he's definitely shown the potential, and you can see why the 49ers like him at the position. I think that it's whoever doesn't win this job ends up becoming a backup.
Interesting. You hear it first with Rohan Chakravarthi on So Real Sports Talk. Shanahan also gave some insight on the Jimmy Garoppolo situation. There was two things that I really took away from this. One was it seems like the decision to not be a part of any of the team activities wasn't just a Shanahan decision. It also seemed to be a Jimmy decision where he decided not to be in any, film sessions or be a part of any of the drills. And then Shanahan further kind of mentioned in passing that, Jimmy is getting ready for whatever his next opportunity is going to be. Pretty much putting the last nail in the coffin, letting everybody know that still may be doubting that Jimmy Garoppolo more than likely is either going to be traded or cut before the season starts. What do you make of those comments from Shanahan, or is it just kind of more of the same?
To me, it's not even about Shanahan in a way. It just furthers my assumption that Jimmy Garoppolo right now, even if the 49ers wanted him back, he's not going to come back because he doesn't want to be back. It was a mutual parting. It's not the 49ers moving on as well. Garoppolo has been ostracized all offseason, really all of last year as well, for his quarterback play. And I think he would just serve best with a new destination, which is why he himself has opted out, because he understands that his best chance to make the most money in his career is to be a starter in 2022. And the 49ers have made that abundantly clear that that's not going to be with them. And so I don't even think he'd return for that reason. And it's obviously interesting given Garoppolo comes out to warm up and have his throwing program on the field during before practice starts and fans see that. It's obviously interesting. But to me, it just furthers the nail in the coffin that Garoppolo will not be a 49er. And it also, while the 49ers have maintained stances earlier in the offseason that they won't cut a player that they believe they can get value for or something like that, I still think that a cut or a trade is bound to happen heading into what we are right now.
And the quest for 6 is QB Nate Sudfeld, the third string. You pretty much have been saying he's situated as QB2, right?
Yeah, he there's no chance, honestly, that Brock Purdy wins QB2. There's a clear quarterback depth chart right now. Sudfeld is 2, Purdy is 3, and Lance is 4.
So there's no QB1 right now. QB1 is Shanahan.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
So on the quarterback situation, I don't know if you got a chance to read about it or look into it. It seems like the 49ers are working out another quarterback, a guy that formerly was with the Jets. The name is slipping right now
James Morgan.
Yeah. Okay, James Morgan. Is this just dotting all their I's, crossing all their T's, or is this maybe a shot at Brock Purdy where they're not necessarily sure if, God forbid, Trey Lance goes down, that they have a viable backup to the backup, Nate Sudfeld?
To be honest, I'm kind of surprised that the 49ers did work out another quarterback. I mean, I understand that, the one thing that I could see from the workout, at least, because I got to watch the workout live. It happened right after practice. Morgan is a bigger quarterback for sure than Purdy. Purdy might be one of the smallest quarterbacks I've seen, just in general. But he's a 7th round pick. You expect him to be a practice squad guy. Maybe Morgan, you carry 2 quarterbacks that are on the practice squad, but I don't know exactly what the move was for. Maybe one of them was experiencing arm fatigue. I'm joking. But, I personally am a little shocked by the move. Maybe it signifies something about Purdy, or maybe more so, the quarterback workout was for the receivers, because you need somebody to throw the ball to the receivers, and maybe that the workout was just for that, because Morgan was throwing the ball to both Willie Snead and D.D. Westbrook, who worked out today, and Snead was signed. So they have an extra roster spot. Like if they wanted to, they could just sign Morgan right now, given
Uh-huh.
that they had 2 free roster spots. I don't know if they're actually going to sign him. I heard a report that they were expected to, but I don't know the validity of it. And so we'll see. This is something that I'm definitely curious to see because like Purdy hasn't been like good, right? He hasn't necessarily shown that he's an NFL level quarterback in practice, but he is a rookie and a 7th round pick. Maybe the 49ers just understood, or like I find it hard to believe that they spent a draft pick on a guy, watching all of his tape, and then realizing that he's like he hasn't been any different that he's been on college tape right now, at least in my eyes. He's had the same weaker arm. Accuracy is fine short, right? He throws a lot of short passes. Accuracy is fine there. Like I don't think he's differed that much from tape, so I find it hard to believe the 49ers didn't understand the quarterback that they were getting into. So we'll see, because like he has guaranteed money on his contract. He's a rookie.
Right. Um, yeah, and I mean, when Shanahan was asked about it, he had no idea that this quarterback was coming in for
Yeah, so I'd
practice. So this
assume
is
like if I'm just giving my assumption, I'd honestly assume that it was just to work out the other guys.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. That's all I have for you, Rohan. Is there anything else off the top of your head that you wanted to discuss from today's day of practice? Anything else that was significant that we didn't touch base on?
Let's think about it.
I know that
Well,
the guys that were speaking were a little bit different from before. I know Moore got some speaking time there, so he must be playing pretty well. That now they're utilizing
who's
him.
more?
Tavon,
Oh, Tarvarius Moore.
Tarvarius Moore, yeah. Tarvarius Moore,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, more. He's getting time with the ones, right? The 49ers, it looks like they'll debut some three safety sets. He's getting some time with the ones. He obviously has the athleticism playing. He can play the deep end, so that could be a thing. Tarvarius Moore maybe getting some time there. Some other things: Womack, Denard split time with the ones today. Womack normally spends time with the twos, right? But they split time with the ones today. So that was a thing. Uh, what else?
So here's my biggest
Go
question,
ahead.
Rohan, because I think the one position where the 49ers really need to decide, I guess, or figure out, and I saw you talking about this a little bit with Grant last night, which I thought, which I really wanted to get your take on it again, is the weakest spot is going to be the nickel option, right? So they're more than likely, offenses are going to have to realize that Ward and Mosley are really good. So they're going to have to they're going to start putting their best receiver maybe at the slot position. Now, I know you mentioned you had some good ideas about maybe how they play that with the three safety, with maybe bringing in a third safety versus bringing in another corner, because you have a lot of faith that maybe Jimmy Ward could possibly be that nickel cover corner instead of bringing in a guy like Denard or Womack. Talk to us a little bit about your thought process through that.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about this a little bit on my stream too. Like you said, 49ers cornerback in the slot is going to get picked on a ton because you've got 2 strong outside corners, right? And I think both of them will hold up just based on their track record, based on what I've seen from camp and based on their track record. I think both of them will hold up. But that slot position, you're going to face a lot of top level receivers in the slot. And I don't know if right now we have a guy who can consistently guard those players in the slot. Now, Jimmy Ward is actually in camp, at least today. He spent a good amount of time near the line of scrimmage. Obviously, it depended on the package that the 49ers offense put out there, but it is surprising. He spent some time near the line of scrimmage. You even saw Talanoa Hufanga in some single high snaps, which isn't necessarily what you want to always see, but it's because of the package. And so what I said is Jimmy Ward, what's his snap count been over the last 2 years? 400 snaps in the box consistently, around there. 200 snaps in the 400 over the top, 200 in the box, and 200 in the slot. I think that slot number is honestly going to go up. He's had 200 apiece in the slot over the last 2 years. I honestly think that should be up, given the amount of top level receivers we play, and that being the one hole right now on this defense. And by hole, I mean the uncertainty on this defense. So I could see Ward in the slot in nickel packages. You might have, and if you want to play a too high shell, you've seen Hufanga cover a third of the deep end. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he might be in the too high shell. You have Tarvarius Moore out there who the 49ers seem to trust a little more. So you could have that, or you could even show single high shells, right? And have Moore be the single high, maybe even Hufanga at times be the single high, that type of thing. And so overall, I could see Jimmy Ward getting an increase in snaps in the slot.
Kyle Young agrees with you. He could see Kyle running some 3 safety sets. I guess for me, the question is going to be, because Verrett was on the field today, which was awesome to see. If he is somewhat healthy or, close to, 100%, that's another option that's a guy with his ability. If he's playing anywhere near to his full potential, you got to find a way to get him on the field too. Could you see him maybe moving into that slot? Or moving onto the outside, moving a guy like Mosley into the slot, or somehow having a combination of where Ward, Mosley, and Verrett are all out there covering, receivers when they have multiple receivers out there on the offense.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing about Verrett, the only thing about Verrett, he's played in the slot. It's not like he can't play in the slot, and I mean, I wouldn't mind it. I've even suggested it at times. The one thing is, he is coming off another injury. The one thing the slot requires, at least in this offense, there are multiple things. First of all, it requires blitzing. The 49ers like to blitz their slot cornerbacks in DB blitzes at times. So Verrett, you're going to throw him in the line of fire like that, going against offensive linemen. That might be a little taxing. And then on top of that, tackling. Slot corner tackling is very important. That's why K1 Williams was one of the most long tenured 49ers, because he could tackle. And can Verrett, do you want to put that amount of physicality on Verrett coming back from that injury as well? That's a question you need to answer. But then again, if you really just want your top cornerbacks on the field, and if you believe Verrett is that guy following injury, I guess he'd throw him in there because his coverage ability obviously is there. It's just the other responsibilities with the slot that a slot cornerback has to deal with. Can Verrett handle those and still remain durable?
I love it, Rohan. Well, I'm going to take you off the hot seat. You did an amazing job, my man. I know you got a lot going on. You did a stream already. I know you're typing up some articles as we speak. What could the fans look forward to out of you as far as your reporting, and what articles do you have coming out?
Yeah, so training camp tomorrow, I will be back. And so, tonight, first of all, you're going to see my practice reports, both on the offense and on the defense. You'll see the 11-on-11s and one-on-one breakdowns. On top of that, tomorrow, me and Marco are both going to be at training camp. You'll see a dual kind of a stream. Both of us are going to go live after the fact, and you guys can catch us there. We're going to be giving our entire breakdown of 49ers training camp. 2 eyes always better than 1 eye. So that is something that you guys can look forward to. And yeah, you got to stay tuned. You got to follow Sunil here on this show, because who knows, we might do a spontaneous show here and there, and y'all definitely can't miss it if you want these 49er content. So be sure to hit that subscribe button on this channel. Be sure to like this video and stay tuned.
I love it. And Rohan, I did put your YouTube link in the description, but I didn't put where they could get your articles at. So why don't you plug your website so that these guys could read it? Because just wanna, because I know Rohan is a very humble guy. Grant is the editor for Sports Illustrated, and he's telling people to go to Rohan's 49er Web Zone articles just because of how in-depth he is as a writer. So definitely, if you guys are 49er nerds like us, you want to go and read what Rohan says, because he's very detailed. But where can they find that? What's the website that they could that you could plug?
Right. So I work for 49ers Web Zone. You can search that up. It is a USA Today page. I work as pretty much their lead writer. So if you want to see any of my written work, search up 49erswebzone.com. You will see my work all over the front page, and definitely a ton of articles there, definitely a ton of work there that you guys can get yourselves into and understand and go really through the training camp experience based on what I'm saying.
I love it. And guys, thank you so much in the chat section for being involved. We love every single one of you that are constantly commenting and making this show fun. Like I always say, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll talk again very, very soon. You guys have a great weekend. Have a safe Friday night, and stay tuned. We might be live tomorrow as well. Who knows? But till then, have a great day.